Okay, thanks everyone for joining. So today we have out of order meeting focused on documentation. Yeah, there we will discuss Google Summer of Code, Google Season of Docs, then a new documentation engine with prototype of the Kuzaros. Rajiv, are you ready to present today?
Yeah.
And Fontor, I won't be presenting after all. Yeah, but I still hope to get to it. Then we may talk about formal design reviewers, and there was a topic about moving Katakoda to GSOD. So it's actually something I would just put here. Any other topics you would like to discuss today? And then let's begin. So for Google Summer of Code, actually nothing changed significantly over the past week. So we are still looking for potential project ideas and mentors if somebody wants to come up with new ideas. And for existing ideas, more mentors are welcome, and more specifically, students are welcome to submit their ideas, to discuss them in the chat. And if you have draft proposals ready, also feel free to publish them so that we can discuss. So no new projects. There were some changes in the mentoring teams, but yeah, right now it seems that for every project we have at least starting group of mentors. So if you're interested in any idea, please feel free to reach out and explore it. Okay, any questions for Google Summer of Code? And let's go to Google Season of Dog then. So for Google Season of Docs, yeah, we have just 2 days until the submission deadline. And the question is whether we want to submit this time. So we have Meha, who is interested in participating as mentee. We have Meg as potential mentor. Well, I could be a potential mentor too. Time capacity, of course, assuming that I find enough capacity to do that. So the question is whether we have enough to apply from your point of view, and whether we should apply. So, yeah. Does anyone else explore Google Season of Docs at the moment?
Not in this season, but the previous season I did look into it. My question to you would be that actually we have in the GSOC you have the documentation side project, right? And
Yeah.
as maybe it makes sense here, and then you could have one more which is more programming oriented in the GSOC.
So GSOC should be programming, GSOC should be documentation. And for documentation, of course, it could be a lot more focused on the content. So we can move the project idea over here. And then we can see whether it would be accepted. Just to show you how the forms look like. So GSOC application process is slightly different. Yeah, and I cannot go forward without reading something. It's not going to work like that. But yeah, the idea that for Google Season of Docs, we will have to find mentees on our own and submit a budget application. But to do that, the first item for us would be to agree on the project. And I think that the project we should focus on is actually reworking the documentation content structure. So basically supporting the documentation engine rework, because there will be definitely plenty of work on improving our documentation, migrating it to new formats, adopting documentation as code, doing various kinds of indexing, rearrangement. So it definitely constitutes a full Google Season of Docs project. And yeah, this is the idea I would proceed with. Micha, what do you think about it? Or Meg?
Yeah, we're not allowed to submit the same idea to both Summer of Code and Summer of Docs, right?
Well, we cannot because the scopes are different. But for example, documentation structure, content, work are completely different from the documentation engine. So yeah, this
Right.
work can happen in parallel, but the projects are different.
Right. That's why I said but the end we couldn't submit to both and see if we got it on one or the other. That's not allowed, right?
It's not how it works
Yeah.
because engine
Right.
is coding work.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so you're basically saying that let the engine be still there at GSOC, and then the documentation process, the structuring and stuff, and then porting the content, we make one project in the GSOC, right?
Exactly. So we will have to work on that regardless of whether we have Google Season of Docs projects or not this year. So let's say probability of being accepted is, let's say, 20 to 30%. But if you accept it, it would give some additional bandwidth to work on the documentation. So,
Right.
of course,
I have mixed because I desperately want to get into the structure and the content and stuff. I'm worried a little bit about trying to do that at exactly the same time, have the two projects at exactly the same time because the engine will somewhat affect the structure.
yes, but
And
we have a lot of obvious changes we want to do,
right,
including restructuring the documentation regardless of the engine.
right,
So, like, you're moving more content outside of the versioning, structuring this content, well, maybe adding search, etc., because it's not a part of the engine. So this what can be done without engine at all. And once engine
right,
is done, of course, we can do more focusing on documentation as code.
right. And we can, I mean, obviously for the content, if we do, we have to come up with I'm we have to come up with projects that are an appropriate size. So maybe we have somebody work on installation or quick start tutorials. We're doing a lot of work on the reference pages with people. We could do the basic pass, but getting those really structured well would be another project perhaps. There's a lot. If we want to go to that, I could sort of make up a rough list of possible projects. But do we want to go that way?
Well, we definitely need one description which would be focused on documentation, restructuring, etc. So, Mike, if you would be willing to write it up, it would be great.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it would be nice to have it by tomorrow so that we can have application going with this project.
No pressure. Got it.
Yeah.
Let me scratch up something. I'll do a rough GDoc. It won't be a formal thing, just to put.
Yeah.
Ideally, I'd like to have 5 or 6 ideas that we could all chime in and say, let's do these 3. I don't think we want to submit 5 or 6 of these, maybe.
Yeah, that's right. And again, for JSOC, it's something dynamic. So you can
Right.
change the scope as the project goes, and there is no
Right.
problem with that.
Okay.
Yeah. So then, if you could write it up, it would be great, and I'll prepare all the application form.
Okay. Do that in the 2 to 3 hours after this meeting. So everybody, and I'll put a link to the Google Doc in Keptn Docs when I have it.
Okay. And yeah, one question which was brought up is about Katacoda, because currently we have Katacoda in JSOC, but there was a question whether it rather fits JSON. So basically this idea interactive coder playground. So when we were discussing it with Afzal, it seemed that it would be a lot of coding there, and hence it would be rather as a part of Google season of code, Google Summer of Code. But again, this is the case when the project again can be represented as coding side or as documentation side. So my question would be whether we would like to have a documentation side for GSOT as one of the options.
I'm thinking, yeah, that everything becomes both. If we want to go Coda, we need to get it set up so we have a generic playground up there, and then instructions, because as we go through and do individual, say, tutorials, we would need we would need a specific Katacoda playground that had what you needed for that particular exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we need the basic setup and then instructions how you create a customized Katacoda to go with a very specific exercise that you want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And so that seems to me Summer of Code. But then whoever might be working on tutorials and example projects and such would need to pick that up, and they would come up with the exercise and then also provide the Katacoda sandbox where you could execute it. So how we work those against each other, a little tricky, doable. I don't know. You've got more experience than I do with these things, so like.
It's doable, but I would rather start from coding part, because before we have
Right, I
coding part,
agree.
we
That's
don't have
got to be the first.
much things to document.
So yeah, I'm thinking that I'm thinking that way too. That we should do the coding part now to get that up. Be very sure that the definition is part of that, is to provide good instructions for anybody who's trying to do a specific exercise and would need their own, to create a separate Katacoda sandbox that would just support their exercise, that would have everything installed that they need. And that's it for this summer, and then other people can work. And it might be that whoever works on, if one of the Google Summer Doc things we do is tutorials and example projects, that it is understood that after the summer somebody might implement the Katacoda sandbox. Is that reasonable? But it's not part of Summer of Docs. Is that how it works?
I think so. So yeah, there is discussion in the chat whether it could be a combination of both. Unfortunately, this is not how Google Summer of Code and Google Season of Docs work. So of course, you can put some bits of documentation in GSOC, and this is what we will expect. So whatever your work should be properly documented and presented to the community. And for Google Season of Docs, it could be the same. So some scripting, like let's say demos, etc., they're appropriate there. But you cannot put both coding and documentation as key deliverables because there are expectations in the program. So in Google Summer of Code, students are expected to code most of the time. In Google Season of Docs, you expect documentation and tech writers to participate and to mostly work on the content. There are even more specific requirements that, for example, localizations shouldn't be projects, etc. So for GSOC and GSOT, we have to put these boundaries in deliverables we work on.
We could, yeah, and let me understand. I'm thinking that if one of our Summer of Docs projects were to be these projects, tutorials, these sorts of things, that part of the definition of that should be a spec for what would need to go into a sandbox, so that it needs this integration, this service. It's a shipyard file that looks like this. To have just that specification. It's not tied. I mean, it wouldn't even be tied to Katacoda. It would be, if you were going to make a sandbox for this is what would need to be included. And that's it. We might even come up, that might not be a bad idea if the directory that had this documentation source had that spec of what's needed for any sandbox that you execute this. It's actually useful information, but it's not coding and implementing it. It's just saying that this example assumes that they've got this and this and this. Is that reasonable
yeah.
or?
Well, it's reasonable per se, but I'm not sure that it's how it's going to work. So yeah, you create all this
Yeah.
specification, but users cannot use it until the engine is created.
Right.
So it will have a limited community value. So in this
Right.
case, I would
It wouldn't be
rather.
used, it would be there for, but it would be as opposed to somebody else coming in and having to read the tutorial and say, oh, okay, they're assuming a shipyard. I've got to build a shipyard file in there. They've got to go through and figure out what needs to be in that shipyard file, that the writer of the tutorial could define what is needed to make this work. It would also be if you wanted to use it for a workshop or whatever, that these are the things, these are the components that would be needed or that are being used for this exercise. I don't know. Let's think about it. I'll make a couple of scratches. First, we figure out we may not even go for the tutorials as being one of the main projects we do. So that would be on my list of 5 or 6, but it might not be on the list of 2 or 3 when we're done.
Yeah, I think it should be rather separate.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, what the conclusion? So I think we should keep Katakoda as is in Google Summer of Code. For documentation, it makes sense to have something on the ideas list, but I'm not sure it would be for Google season of docs this year. It can be, let's say, LFX mentorship in autumn, etc. But right now, I wouldn't rather see it as a GSOT project.
No, I agree. Implementation, definitely not. Spec, maybe. I would argue that spec would be part of defining this. But let me write it up and we can look at it. We don't need to argue it out here.
Okay. So anything else on Google season of docs, or should we proceed with the documentation engine?
Yeah, that's a biggie.
Let's proceed then. And by the way, anyone, if you want to just jump into the discussion and provide some comments, just unmute yourself. Yeah, discussing in chat is perfect, but you have full rights to discuss the meeting with everyone else, as everyone else. Oh, okay. So should we then proceed? Yeah, I'll provide a quick overview, but I guess it will be mostly up to Rajiv today.
Sorry, Oleg. Before that, so the conclusion on Google Summer of Docs is we're not putting Katakoda in Google Summer of Docs, right?
So it won't be a separate project, I would rather expect. So the project idea can be there. But for Katakoda as GSOT, we would rather target autumn or whatever when we have engine implemented. So once we have engine where we can provision Keptn instances with all the scripts, so then somebody can go forward and update all tutorials, etc., to use Katakoda. But the engine goes first.
Okay, so just to be clear, so the engine is not part of Google Summer of Docs. What is part of Google Summer of Docs is what goes inside Katakoda, the way the tutorials are designed, right? That is where the technical writing part comes in.
Well, mostly still providing tutorials because you need to rework all tutorials so that they follow Katakoda as one of the options. So you actually use it. It will require some examples, some configurations, and ultimately a lot of documentation, like step-by-step guides, descriptions, etc. So this part, which could be a part of GSOT or another project later this year.
What we currently a number of tutorials, etc. There's a lot of issues with a lot of them, but the current way of doing the tutorials is we have the files you need for sample projects are in GitHub, and part of your instructions you have to go through and you have to either bring or create a Kubernetes cluster, and you have to install and the CLI and Keptn itself and create an instance. And then it tells you to download this stuff from GitHub. So you have to set all of that stuff up. So that whole process, and then you get to do the exercise and actually learn something. The advantage of Katacoda is we can say, we're going to show how you can use SLOs to measure performance in your application before you deploy it, and go to this Katacoda instance and do this, and you'll fire up, and then you will have all of that stuff there, and they can start with the exercise under Katacoda. But if we never do Katacoda, or until we do Katacoda, they still got to do the exercise. They're just going to have to download everything from GitHub and install everything for themselves. So Katacoda is better, but the information is right there. So part of and one of the things I think is a lot of these tutorials were done by somebody very smart at one moment in time, and they just created everything and made it work. But then somebody else comes in and they don't understand what's in the project, what has to be in that project to make it work. And it's making maintenance and updating, keeping it, really tough. So it may well be that the important thing to make these sample projects work is to have whatever you're doing when they get here to do the exercise, they need to have this stuff set up. So, yeah, but all of that stuff is independent of whether or not we do Katacoda. So.
So basically, we have three deliverables. Firstly, specification, as Mark mentions, with all these requirements, etc. Then engine that allows to implementing these specifications, and then the actual implementation with all the documentation. Do I interpret it correctly?
Got it. Thank you, Oleg and Meg. So basically, even if there's some technical stuff involved in the documentation, we are fine with it as long as documentation is the main focus. And that's how we basically include it in the boundary of Google Summer Talks.
Yeah.
Right.
So here we are talking about technical writing. So it means that technical writers are expected to actually be able to run the product, to evaluate it, to document the real user and developer experience. And it would be a wrong expectation if you just set writing and restructuring and documentation without ever launching Keptn.
Right.
So this is definitely something
And
that
it will,
shouldn't.
My biases, but I think one of the issues with our current tutorials is it's a lot of do this, do this, do this, do this, and then everybody sit back and go, wow. It's not necessarily a good first learning step. It doesn't say, okay, we're going to do this because we need such and such. And in this example, we're doing this, but you could also, in this example, we're using Prometheus, but this would also work with Datadog and Dynatrace and this and that, but you would have to do this. I don't know exactly what the stuff is, but there's no richness there. When I'm done doing that exercise, I don't know a lot more than I did when I started. I've just made something happen. But by sitting there, I've copied this line, I've clicked that button, and everything happened. I got red and green squares on my display, but I didn't really learn anything. And that's where the real writing skill challenge and frankly interesting work here would be, is for somebody to put that richness into the text, which is pure writing. But pure writing based on running, of course, the things. So.
So the problem I'm hearing, Meg, is how do you give a more holistic understanding from a quick start, right? Or from a tutorial. Okay.
Right. This is my opinion, by the way. I don't know that I speak officially for anybody. It's just my opinion. But let's not go down too far down the rabbit hole. But it is there is a place for demos that are sort of pre-sales where you just get people interested and you say, or pre-implementation, but say, look you can make it do this and this and this. And that's sort of, to me, the tutorials that I've looked at, that's sort of where they are. There's the other one that this is how you really get started using this. And it includes, in most cases, it's going to be the happy path. You're not going to give them, at least the first level of tutorials, it's not going to be something difficult, but you're going to warn them, this is a complicated project and you have to be, don't do this because it could, cause a little bullet to go through your big toe. So yeah, so that would be a lot of the art of the writing, and one of those things that we'll figure out as we go along. So engine.
So I think Kunal raised a question about where does the Katakoda project idea go into, the engine idea go into? Does it go into GSOC, or are we planning to do it as a part of LFX?
I think what he's saying is that the engine and Katakoda both go into Summer of Code, right, Oleg?
Engine and what?
And Katakoda, both are code for the summer.
Yes, so these parts have to go to GSOC. Well, it can be LFX mentorship, because in LFX mentorship we are more flexible in what is the project scope. So we can have hybrid projects, documentation and coding. But yeah, for us, the main problem is that clearly we won't have bandwidth to run LFX mentorship in parallel with GSOC and GSOC. So most likely it would be later, maybe in autumn, if we do like that.
That presents interesting possibilities then, but...
So LFX mentorship is basically our own program. So project finds money somehow, and finding money is the easy part. Finds mentors and agrees on the scope with the mentee, and they go ahead. It can be basically anything.
So we could work on the tutorials, on the content, on the writing, on the projects, get interesting projects with interesting, rich commentary for it, and the instructions for doing everything the hard way, which is basically you set up your own environment to run it in. And then somewhere in the future, if we had something like Katakoda, there's actually other options. But whatever that, we could go in and make it so they didn't have as much work to do to set it up.
Well, I would rather have Katakoda earlier. Or another way, because Katakoda is quite handy when you need to deploy a demo.
I'm just saying there are other options. It would just the Katakoda. We would write the tutorial.
Well, it could be just proper scripting, because many of the current items could be automated by just a shell script on our side.
Right.
Or Golang CLI for demos, whatever you want. Because...
But put it another way, if you take exactly what we've got now for tutorials, and we had Katakoda up, and you could run them on Katakoda, I still think they would be unsatisfactory as tutorials. And that's the work to be done in Google Summer of Docs, is to get that content and the writing up to snuff. And then it's a tooling issue of how we get them, how we more easily and reliably get them into an environment where they can do the exercise. Does that sound reasonable, Oleg?
Yeah. Okay.
We'll write it up. Engine.
Sorry, one last thing. So wants to pick up the engine part as a part of GSOC, they can go ahead and do it, right?
Yes, we already have this project idea, so I think we need to keep it, and we can make it work.
Oh, thank you.
So for that, I think we keep it, so we don't remove the project idea, and let's see whether we have potential mentees who are interested in this project. Then looking forward to proposals.
Hello. Hi everyone. Yeah, actually, yes, I missed some of the points. Actually, I came here late. I joined here late actually. Uh, Considering about Katagoda, like for GSOC, uh, what's all of your opinions? Like, should we consider this project for GSOC or GSOC? Or maybe I was wondering, like, on the Slack channel, uh, or like you just like asked, like, could it be another project idea for GSOD? Then I thought, like, yeah, it could be. Then uh, maybe we can shift this to GSOD. Because if you consider the other tutorials like videos and writing some refactoring existing docs, so maybe we can extend those idea and consider it.
You mean consider this part for GSOD?
Yeah, I was asking, should we consider or
So my understanding that what we agreed on that yeah, we keep the current ID in GSOC.
yeah?
I mean the ID which was represented here. We can fine tune it to emphasize that it's more on scripting, etc. But we keep this ID here, and for GSOD, we actually Mike is going to create summary of what could be done with tutorials, etc. And it would include Katakoda as one of sub items. But yeah, right now we wouldn't put a special idea just for Katakoda.
Okay.
Do you capture this agreement? Okay, Suresh, Meg?
I think so.
Yeah.
We'll do it and we can discuss it in Slack tomorrow.
Yeah, so it makes sense to mention Katakoda there, but regarding full-fledged project idea, I think that we firstly need an engine to be ready.
I agree. I will put
Mhm.
a project that makes sense, but later section at the end of this. And I think that's what I'm going to put providing a Katakoda environment for different exercises.
Yep.
But meanwhile, there's plenty of work that can be done.
Okay, so I suggest that we move on because we don't have much time left. And yeah, so next discussion we can really have tomorrow when we have action items in place. So then we can review again. Okay, so then documentation engine. So again, we are talking about engine, not about full documentation restructuring. So this is the old summary we created. We have also project idea. Basically, one of items we need to agree on is what would be our future engine. So initially I proposed Antero because I do have experience with it. I think it fits the use case well. But we had a discussion whether we would like to proceed with Antero or maybe with Docusaurus, who's more designed for Markdown. And this is where we stay at the moment. So right now, again, it's up for discussion, up for proposals. So everyone can make a proposal for Antera, for Docusaurus, or basically for any other engine you can come up with. I just ask, please do not suggest WordPress. Other things we can really discuss and agree how we implement.
Word's out of the issue too, right?
Sorry?
Microsoft Word is out of the running.
Well, one might say that docx is an open format. You can put XML in source control.
Aha. Yes. Yes. Okay.
No, please don't. But yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and actually, So now I think that we should just give floor to Rajiv because he created a prototype for Docusaurus, so we can take a look together and see whether we can refocus on it as one of the ways to go. Again, it doesn't put Antora off the table, but at least it would provide some insights for those who consider Docusaurus.
Yeah, hello.
So, yeah, hello.
Yeah, I'm audible. Yeah. Hello, everyone.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm Rajiv. I'm a final year student from India. So I'm going to give a POC on Docusaurus, and this all discussion will be based on we are discussing revamping the Keptn doc site. And so let me share the screen.
Okay, let's see whether it works.
Yeah. Screen?
Not yet.
No.
Oh, okay. I think I have to give.
So you might need to grant special permissions. Welcome back.
Yeah, 1 minute. I think I have to restart this browser.
Yeah, so Baby uses WebRTC. Sometimes there are issues with it because WebRTC, with all respect to the technology, is still not 100% stable. It also requires a lot of permissions in browsers like Chrome, so sometimes it doesn't quite work. Well, once you get it stable, it works, but we always experience issues. Fortunately or not, I think we have to stick with Baby for now. If somebody wants to try, yes.
Can you also share the limitation of the current system that you have, so to make a fair judgment on both technologies?
Yes. Yeah. So while we wait for Rajiv, I can actually show it to you. So currently we use Bevy provided by the CNCF. So they have a community portal. There you can host various virtual and hybrid meetings. Bevy itself isn't well designed for hybrid meetings. It just can be a platform like meetup.com in this case. And for video, it supports up to 50 hosts with voice and video. So for various kinds of meetups, project meetings. And for webinars, it supports up to 500 people, if I recall correctly. So webinars is basically when not everyone gets voice permissions. And yeah, this is quite a good capacity for us.
Yeah. Hello. So
yeah,
can you see this? Yeah, can you see the screen now?
I can see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so my proposal is for Docusaurus. So so all the links and all the docs discuss is already in the meeting notes, so you can go through that and Slack threads and all. So I have first a doc like difference between the Antora and all Docusaurus and other engines. So all the points related to it. I'm not going through that, like why we need Antora, why we need Docusaurus. My like Docusaurus, I think Antora will be given by OLED. Okay, so so the two reasons why I'm is like the Docusaurus has a JavaScript code inside a Markdown. So like So the that like themes own different pages. JavaScript we can create a website properly and all in Markdown. So that's one feature. So in future, if you want to design some example, like want to show some animations, want to show some, we can create that inside the Markdown docs. Docusaurus, we have MDX support. The reason of supporting Docusaurus is like obviously in now most of the doc site is based on so it will be so change a Docus something else might be we have a markdown to content, so to from one site to another site because we have a markdown. In case of Antora, I think we don't have a markdown support properly. I'm not sure. So that's a two reasons. Docusaurus. There are other reasons too, like the features of Docusaurus, like we build on top of we have a for that we can have a live score on we can see on docs or we have a because obviously so based on React, so we have easy to SEO friendly. This I've already discussed. Powered by MDX, a powerful search. So we can use have a search support, but we can use Algolia on top of it to search our contents. So a search tool, document versioning, we can versions of docs. So we can see like I have like POC website here. I'm running locally. We can you can see the website here also. Like it's in meeting notes. So like we have two versions of docs, like 1.1.0, 1.2.0. We can have versions of docs. Like and like I18 support. We have language supports, different language supports. Obviously, the lightning fast code reloading. It's easy to use. Like we don't have to care much about the code. If you want to, like you can, but like it's just a markdown based, so easy to use and all. That's like about the Docusaurus. Like it's a tool for easy building, deploying, and maintaining open source project. Facebook. So now I will give a like two things: the versioning of docs and doc support. That means can we able to like can we able to pull the docs like demonstrate on the main site. So first I will show the versioning. So we have I have created two 1.1.0 and 1.2.0. Okay. So like you can see this is one. So don't so let's create. I want to create one more version of the. It creates a duplicate of the remaining. So like I will just create one more. So we have 1.2.1.0. So it will duplicate the this dot. That's what we have. So our version created. We don't have to take much take care of much. Like this docs 1.2.0 and this is the new docs 1.3.0. All the documents of this is duplicated in 1.3.0. So when we go to that local site, so we can see 1. Here I think let me refresh it. I think we have to restart. Okay, so we got a 1.3.0 this repo, and this will be same as the current version, like because we have to the current. This is the latest. We can, if you want, we can like hide this also. These are messages we can just edit it. Like if you want, this is not unstable version. Use it. Anything we want to put it, like we can like this is the current. This is all the versions. This is the like the current and the latest one. If you want to showcase, like if you want to showcase the like current one, like just I will put a for will be only the that different version will showcase like this. This is the wait a minute. It's not okay. We don't have version the current version, so we can configure accordingly. So this is very easy to use. Nothing you have to. If you want to edit, like you can go to that folders and if you want to organize, like if you want to showcase, like I want to showcase here like 1.2.0, not 1 point. So you can easily configure using sidebar, like accordingly 1 point. You just rename it or just hierarchy wise, like. Okay, so now the second like I think is like the two things were mentioned, more focus on this versioning and thing. So this is easy to like, I showcase this, and now the one, like we have a doc site. So like we want to showcase all other repo docs in the same doc site. So how do we do it? So I have like we have discussion on Slack. You can find on the I put the links in the Keptn meeting notes. So the possible solution, like given by Suraj and even so, like we can write a GitHub actions to pull the docs from different repo and just present to the like that Keptn doc site. Like my approach was to like having a Docker site for each repo. Like we on doc, we can just but that is like very cumbersome process. Even I'm not supporting this. I've just put it here. Thing is that we can use. We have a plugin for a Docusaurus which pulls docs from other repos. This is called Docusaurus plugin remote content. I think we need one more POC on this now, because I found a different way to pull the docs, and that's is a 0MD tool. Like it's a tool which can pull a markdown. Which can pull the docs from doc, and we can render it to different markdown. I will showcase this how I'm doing this. So let me go to. So you can see this, right? This is nothing but this is a README file of Keptn, and I didn't use it. Didn't code it. I just pulling it from README. So if you change here, it will change there also. I'll show you how I'm doing it. So this is the 1 point. I'm in the 1.1.0 version, and this is the intro MDX file. So this is I'm pulling this README this. So if you want, if you want to pull something else, I want to showcase it. Like I want to pull changelog. Like many times you want to showcase all the changelog to the website. So I will see I will URL, and I will change the README to. Now it should file here. Oh, all changelog. So we can now I am showcasing. But you won't be able to find in this here because I'm not pushing it to the repository. I think this we can. I think this is a one way to pull the docs from one to one. Anything to change there also. This there. So the 0MD like this just to pull the docs from one place and just render it. I have just used so images. I just simple HTML and just using the 0MD to pulling the docs. So this is even now also we should focus on this. I have to try this, the Docusaurus plugin, and even the GitHub Actions thing. This is like something a lot of discussion needed here. So I think the two things this is versioning and is done and completed. Other than that, other things of Markdown is Docusaurus. Since we want to pull docs from other repos, we want to. So the power of create a custom email pages, like we have a blog pages. So like that, we can here in the top bar, we can create all the docs of other repos, like to. So that is more more suitable. Like we can create here our custom pages, and like this, we have a sidebar accordingly. So that's that's why the more the scalable thing. So that's about the links, meeting notes.
Thanks for the demo. Indeed, it should be able to work in our case. One question is about scalability, because if we talk about pulling, let's say, a limited number of files like changelog, etc., from external repositories, it's one of the questions. But if we assume that we would be pulling thousands of files, sometimes folders, then the question is whether this approach would actually work.
That's a question. When I was thinking, we don't want any one single file. We want a lot of whole repo, and we also have to see where we are pulling the code. We have to segregate, like it should be in docs folder. So I'm focusing more on GitHub Actions. We have to write we have to try things. I think I've GitHub that Docusaurus plugin. I think I've gone through a Docusaurus site that, so we can take ideas from that thing. And yeah, this is achievable. This is not like something people didn't use. This is achievable.
Yeah,
what about the versioning? Sorry. What about the versioning of the content that you're going to pull from the other places? This is also, I guess, could be a problem, because then you're fetching it on the fly, and then in your main site you cannot version it, right?
No, versioning is like it will create a new whole folder on like a new version. So in that, everything will be there. What we have like a whole new structure of that. So inside that structure only we will be using. Yeah.
No, I was not talking about the versioning of the main Docusaurus site, but you use 0MD to pull the content from other places, right? And those other places, other repos also have multiple version of code, right? It won't have just one version. How would you make sure that the versioning reflects in the place where you're pulling it and they are in the sync? Because there will be just one content you could do at one point.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like the plugin I saw you, Docusaurus, it has the versioning thing in that, with that pulling up with the version thing. Like we can use version. We should use the Docusaurus plugin, not this. This is just a showcase. Like this is achievable, and even that question is like that is also like solvable by using that Docusaurus content plugin. And like you can go to the I will showcase a site which is using it, so we can get an idea like on that.
Yeah. Also, so one of the things we could always consider is Git Sub Models, because many items could be potentially just rebuilt from by using sub models. You can pull, let's say, GitHub repositories by specific version, specific branch. You can also use Dependabot to automatically update these dependencies. It has a lot of limitations, but it's also something we could consider. What I like about Antora is that it's basically designed for multi-repository documentation that by default it can pull from different locations. Sadly, today I don't have a demo fully ready, but I still plan to do that. And yeah, so we can actually there focus on this multi-repository use case. I believe that with Docusaurus we can also resolve that. The question is about complexity.
So are there advantages of Docusaurus over ASCII Doctor and Antora?
The first one is Markdown, because
Right.
Markdown is arguably easier for developers than ASCII Doctor. ASCII Doctor is just, it has a lot more features. But if you don't use them, ASCII Doctor is also quite simple. But there are features that are available for professional editors, for example, templating, macros, and other things. Basically, ASCII Doctor comes with full functional complete programming language, so you can do a lot of the things there if you really want.
Right.
In
My
Markdown,
concerns. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
so
Go
in
ahead.
this case, we are rather talking not about pure Markdown, but about extended Markdown, because, for example, Hugo supports templating in Markdown. Here, Rajiv presented MDX, which is also Markdown with some extensions, with references, with plugins being connected. And so it wouldn't be correct to just compare Markdown and ASCII Doctor. In both cases, we are working with rather tools that provide a lot of solutions for common problems.
Right.
That's
My
fair.
my concerns, yeah, getting away from Markdown to me is a plus. But I don't know what these ones that bother me are the cross-referencing facilities in Markdown, especially internally, are weak and somewhat unreliable. Ditto the ability to put comments inside a file is fraught, shall we say, with Markdown. Although I do know that some work has been done, externally.
You can
There's
put comments.
formatting things. Huh?
You can put comments on Markdown by just HTML comment.
Yes.
You have to do HTML. You can't do it with actual Markdown coding.
That's actually still valid Markdown.
No, I understand. Yeah, but so I'm just saying, just cons. I think I don't know if I care about this that much, but with Markdown, I think you can't indent a table, a good table. You have some formatting. ASCII Doctor does more formatting, has more formatting options if you want to exercise them. And I can go pro and con. I mean, you can go too far with all the formatting.
What do you mean by formatting, Meg? What do you mean by formatting? Just didn't get the point.
Issues like whether it has to be flush to the left margin, or it can be centered, or to the right. I think in basic Markdown, at least, you don't have any choice. You can't control how that plays out. As I say, not a huge thing, just an issue. In general, Markdown is considered to be not appropriate for longer files, and right now we don't have longer files, but I can anticipate going forward that we may have some longer files. Part of that is because the internal cross-referencing, with a long file, you want a good internal table of contents at the top. So, and to me, I don't know, maybe I'm insensitive here. I don't think ASCII Doctor is really more complicated than Markdown. It's just that people know Markdown and ASCII Doctor, but they're very, very similar. They are not radically different. It's not like going to, say, GROF. It's the same principle. And in general, I think most engineers, when they're writing, sort of take a doc that looks sort of like what they want and just copy that formatting and turn it over to professional writers if they want to get fancy. So, but I would vote to get away from Markdown and use ASCII Doctor. But that's what's the counter argument? What are the, other than not having to convert out of Markdown, what are the advantages? Docusaurus do other things that ASCII Doctor does not.
I guess the question here is how does MDX, that is the extended markdown, compare with ASCII doc, and how easy / difficult it is to use one over other, and for which user? So the second question is, who is going to be contributing to the docs? And on the basis of that, I think we should look at making a decision, because like Meg said, if you say it from a technical writer's perspective, maybe ASCII doc is something that offers more features and more complete set of features, so to say. But if you look at it from a developer's perspective, that's just adding one extra wall to contribution, because then you have to go and look at some kind of cheat sheet for ASCII doc.
Well, basically, ASCII doc is also well supported by GitHub web interface. So you can edit, you can preview, you can open reference sheet from GitHub. But I think that in any case, supporting Markdown will be a table stake requirement for us, because I do not see how we migrate all the ecosystem to ASCII doc overnight. And I do not see how we could get all the maintainers on board. So for me, even if you have ASCII doc, let's say as a core, let's say for new tutorials, for new documentation, many let's say integrations, etc., will stay as Markdown. Basically, if you take Jenkins as example, it's basically the same. The most of README MDs for plugins, they remain in Markdown. Because it's simple, condensed documentation, so why not?
So we might leave the integration in Markdown, you're saying, for instance.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure that we will need. So if we go forward with Antora, we will need to import Markdown, at least for some cases. And we will also need a kind of smooth integration.
What happens to the main Keptn repo? Do we also keep that in the Markdown?
Possibly.
Like the README files, you mean?
Yeah. Because I think developers, and this is just my opinion, would be more comfortable writing README which sits closer to the code in Markdown, and then we basically use ASCII doc for the real tutorials for the new users and all of that, which developers might not write, and we see a way to convert the Markdown into ASCII doc. Everything becomes much more complicated with that.
But the READMEs can be in either Markdown or ASCII doc. And my impression in Jenkins, I think we have quite a mix of them, don't we?
We don't.
Olaf?
No, so yeah, actually as a developer, I prefer ASCII doc still. But yeah, Markdown, its advantages, of course, low barrier to entry, native support by GitHub. So let's see. I expect that we would have to support both languages in any case. But yeah, for complex documentation like tutorials, etc., I would rather start looking in ASCII doc. Yeah.
Another consideration in here, I honestly do not know if Markdown holds up, but the other thing that I am sort of seeing is that other products that are, not part of Keptn might include some Keptn and might want to be able to pull in sections of Keptn documentation. For instance, the reference pages about the files, although they might not do the same tutorial information, because you would, on that product, on Prometheus or Dynatrace or whatever, you would use it differently. I think ASCII Doctor could support that easily, and it would even be, if they wanted, they could use their own product name or something. It could be set up that way if we want to. And part of me shudders at the possibility of having to do that, but I think we're going to get called for that. Now, how well would Docusaurus support somebody pulling in some of the Keptn documentation into their own product documentation?
It's actually a pretty good question, because the zero-MD demo that Rajiv showed actually is the same thing would happen to Keptn docs, because the docs would be written in the Markdown, and anybody can use just any plugin to fetch the Markdown and then render it on their screen.
Because well, what I'm thinking is that let's say that they pull in the reference pages for all of the files that are used in Keptn. They don't want to do that once. They want to do that constantly, so that when we update those docs, they get the updated version. That's the issue. It's a question of constantly importing our docs and not stealing them for one time and then taking off and maintaining them on their own.
Sure.
And
But that's the thing.
there's a lot of issues with that. Beyond what language they're in and what tool, but it's something we should consider as we make the choice for what engine we want to use, as to how well it would support that.
But to your question, if you just reference the documentation from the current source, which would be the Keptn source, for instance, then it would always render the latest information coming from that. If you fetch the data and host it yourself, then it's a different story, right? So if someone just want to link it to our doc, they would just reference it, and then it will be always the latest.
Right. There is that, and as I say, I don't know for sure. People always want something they can't have. I am hearing rumblings from places that they may want to be able. There's an argument, and again, I'm not real sure I buy it, but there are a sizable number of people who say that if I pay for an enterprise product, I want all the documentation that I need to be in their set, that I do not want to be sent linking over to the open source documentation all the time. I'm not really convinced of that. There's an argument, but there are a sizable number of people who make that argument. So yeah, I'm kind of with you in my heart. It's like our docs are there if you want to reference them, link to them. But for these people who say they need to import them, it's worth considering how well whatever end import that. And it's not just the Markdown versus ASCII doctor, it's what the engine does for them.
Okay, so yeah, we are going seriously over time. So for me, the takeaway that Docusaurus is more than viable, and that we need to continue prototyping, maybe as a part of community bonding, first implementation phase, and there we make a final decision of what we want to go with. But for now, for me, Docusaurus is a viable option. We just need to bring up questions and see how we answer them. And I believe that Antora will have to answer the same questions.
Yes. And I will volunteer at some point, maybe not tonight because I've got another project, but if we would like to take a small sample of our stuff and run it through Pandoc, and then I would volunteer to go through and do the manual cleanup and from that and time it to see, for this size file, it took me this long to clean it up. If to use Pandoc to convert from Markdown to ASCII doctor, because it sounds like that's one of the considerations, right?
So Pandoc will generate you fully legit Markdown. Sorry, it creates fully legit ASCII doc from Markdown and vice versa. Converting Markdown to ASCII doc is especially easy because, ASCII doc supports all the features. The problem is with additions like macros, etc. So this is the part which you will need some additional steps.
Right. And I'm sorry, I've been through too many doc conversions. I never trust 100% automation. There is a manual step that you have to go through. But
totally right.
But I've actually, I've been through a couple of similar ones. I didn't find it onerous, and most of these docs, I spent more time because I had to read everything. I couldn't ignore all the grammatical and syntactical and spelling errors that you ran along the way. I usually spent more time cleaning those up. But it's worth a test. We should have data here to make as part of this decision as to whether the conversion to ASCII doctor is onerous. So.
Okay, so I suggest we wrap up then. So we have a remaining topic about reviewers, etc. But yeah, again, it can be discussed later. So my suggestion that we wrap up. Tomorrow we also have a developer meeting the same time. So if you're interested to follow the development part of Keptn, please feel free to join. And yeah, thanks
And I'll
everyone.
post a Google Doc in the next couple of hours with a rough suggestion of potential projects for Google Summer of Docs. Please vote fast.
Thank you. Okay. So
Okay.
then see you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks all.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Mm.